My name is Ernie Schultz, and I came to work in the news department at WKY-TV in 1955 after 1 year at a new television station in Enid, KGEO. At that station, I worked a 60-hour week for $55 a week. So when Bob Gamble hired me at Channel 4 and offered me $85 a week for a 40-hour week, I thought that was wonderful. I could not wait to get to Channel 4 because it was the summit. It was probably one of the 5 best local television stations in the country, and it was famous for its news department. Bob Gamble taught me everything I know about television news. He was a great boss, still a good friend of mine. And the general manager, Norm Bagwell, was very supportive of television news, very supportive of me personally. We had a great staff down through the years. We had Bob Dodson, who went on to greater things at NBC. Bella Shaw went to the West Coast and did her thing. But the people I remember the most are the photographers, because our photographers didn't just shoot film, they tried to tell stories with film. And we had some great ones. Darrell Barton, Houston Hall, Scott Berner, Cliff Atkins. I could go on and on. I probably shouldn't have named just 4 because we had so many, but it would take me a long time to name them all. They were so good that we won awards for their work. We were the News Film Station of the Year several times. Under Bob Gamble's leadership, we were the News Station of the Year for 1 year. It was a great place to work, working with great people, and we had some good times. Houston Hall won News Photographer of the Year, and Norm Bagwell said, let me handle the presentation. Just tell him to come in this station and come up to my office. So I got on the radio and told Houston to come in and see Norm. And there was this pause on the radio, and Houston says, what does he want? Norm Bagwell was a former FBI agent, and he had a way of looking at you that you thought he knew everything in your mind. I suppose he developed that in interrogation skills. Anyway, Houston came into the station parking lot on 2 wheels and came bursting through the door. What does he want? What does he? I don't know, Houston. Go up and see him. Oh, he was eating a cigarette as he tore out of the newsroom. Went up to Norm's office. Norm kept him waiting. Norm told me about it later. Norm kept him waiting for a few minutes and then led him into his office, sat him down, gave him that flat look, and asked him, Houston, what have you been up to? And Norm said, he started to tell me. So anyway, Norm finally gave him the good news, and Houston staggered out. Norm Bagwell was very supportive of the news department, very supportive of me personally. In 1964, after Bob Gamble had left and after Dick John had left for Tampa to take over the Opelka station there, and we didn't have a news director, Norm called me into his office and said, Ernie, I'm going to make you news director if you'll do one thing for me. Quit acting like you know more than anybody else in the station. And I said I would try, and he said, that's all I can ask. And he made me news director, and I did try. I don't know how well I succeeded, but I did try. News film was really more important to the newsroom when I was news director than the words or just about anything else. I thought that news film, showing people the news rather than just telling them about it, was our strongest point. So we spent a lot of time and effort in film and tried to get a different angle, a different view of everything, and we were very heavily into aerials. And I had an airplane, And then I flew to grass fires and oil well fires and floods, and even the McAllister prison break one famous weekend. And we devised a way to drop the film next to the station so that it could go through the film processor by the time the photographer and I got back from landing the plane at Expressway Airport. And my wife took a pillow and hollowed it out a little bit so that we could put the film in the pillow, and then the photographer would drop it out of the airplane as I flew past the station. Well, one day we were coming back, and it was during a period of bomb scares. During the integration period for Oklahoma City schools, a lot of youngsters thought it was very clever to call the school and tell them that there was a bomb in the auditorium or a bomb in one of the classrooms, because then it emptied the school and they got out of class and stood around outside and thought that was pretty neat. Well, coming back from one of the aerial missions, I lined up to make the pass by the station. I saw all these people outside the station, and I thought, at last, they have recognized my aerial skills and they've come out to watch us drop the film in the parking lot so that it could get into the film processor early. And I was pretty proud of myself. And I dropped the film and went to the airport and came back in, and I said, "So, you finally realized just what we have here, did you?" "No, Ernie, we had a bomb scare." And the entire staff was ordered out of the building while they searched for the bomb. In fact, one of the policemen, when he saw your airplane coming right at the station at a very low altitude, reached for his pistol. And then someone said, no, that's not a bomber, that's Ernie." And I was very pleased that they had done that. And it became, less of a thrill. But anyway, and speaking of aerials, I stayed with the airplane a little too long. Channel 9 got a helicopter, and they didn't use it particularly well. I didn't think they used it any better than I did my little 170, Cessna 170, but they promoted it. And they had a tremendous promotion campaign. Chopper 9, in between every element of programming, it seemed to us, here was Chopper 9. And so we finally had to get a helicopter, more for promotional reasons than anything else. And that brings to mind the story of the time that Bella Shaw and a very, very attractive female photographer, one of the few on the staff, was sent to an oil well fire in northwest Oklahoma. The helicopter pilot told me the story after the event. After they circled the fire to take their aerials, he landed and they got out. They were both very attractive women. This was at a time when Charlie's Angels was very big on television. And a deputy sheriff came up to them and they said, "Hello," and I'm quoting the helicopter pilot now. The deputy sheriff says, "Hey," and they said, "We are here to shoot the oil well fire." And the deputy sheriff said, and they walked up and shot the oil well fire and came back and thanked the deputy sheriff, whose jaw had never closed, according to the helicopter pilot, from the time he saw them step out of the helicopter till the time they left. And when they said goodbye, the helicopter pilot, the deputy sheriff said, At a more serious level, I've already told you how much I appreciated the leadership of Norm Bagwell. Well, it was more than leadership. At one point, in the middle of the Watergate crisis for the Nixon administration, the networks were hitting him pretty hard and accurately for all the things that were going on and especially the cover-up. And on our local newscasts, we usually had sections of national news, and we would report the same facts, usually from AP. And Oklahoma was very, very much in favor of the Nixon administration. They had voted for him overwhelmingly and supported him entirely. And as a state was pretty much convinced that the whole Watergate thing was a put up by the liberals. And so when we reported the facts, the testimony and in the hearings and the break-in and the whole thing, we got a lot of phone calls saying, you know, he's a great president, back off. And we said, thank you for calling. But I am convinced that Norm took a lot of pressure. Downtown, Chamber of Commerce, maybe some other places, advertisers and whatnot. He took a lot of heat, and only on a couple of occasions, he hinted at that, but he never once told us to back off. And for that, he won not just my respect, but my everlasting love. I think he was a great guy and a great general manager and a great person. Darrell Barton was probably the best of all the really good photographers that we had, and he cared very much about his film. One day it was on a weekend, and he had some really good film, and he had to get it through the film processor and get it on the air that day, right away. And we could all run the film processor, though we had somebody who did it full time during the week. So Darrell slaps the film in the film processor, and the dry box went out, blew a fuse or something. And the film started to come out, and there was no dry box, so he couldn't let it go onto the take-up reel wet, because it would stick and all kinds of terrible things would happen. Well, it just so happened that the dressing rooms were just down the hall from the film processor room. And in the dressing rooms that day were about 20 wrestlers, professional wrestlers, getting ready to tape about 10 or 15 shows with Danny Williams. And the dressing rooms were something. They were filled with tubes of Max Factor makeup, because the wrestlers provided tans to their entire body for each program, because the natural human skin color was terrible on television at that time. We all had to wear pretty heavy pancake makeup, but they had to wear it all over their body. The dressing rooms, after they were through with them, just smelled terribly. Anyway, Darrell runs down and gets somebody to take a member of the staff to take the end of the film as it came out of the processor and start down the hall with it. It would dry in the air. He ran into the wrestlers' room. These were large, very athletic men, and said, "Everybody out." And he drove them out of their dressing rooms into the hall and ordered them to pick up the film at about 10-foot intervals and march down the hall behind the one in front of them. And here were these 10, 15 guys in their wrestler trunks and carrying this film down the hall. Then they would turn around and come back down the hall until all 300 feet or 400 feet, however much Darrell had, was out of the processor. And then they had to stand there and hold it until it dried. It was incredible. You had to see it to believe it. One of the high points of the day during the workday was a touch football game, which we usually played around noon after the noon news and before the afternoon got underway. And everybody would pile out, and Ray played with the news department. Ray Summers, who was the film processor, he played with the news department, and he was a wonderful split end. He could catch anything, throw it anywhere near him, and Ray would get it. And he was pretty fast, and he'd outrun a lot of people. But just about everybody in the news department at one time or another played on the news department team, and we played the stage department. And they claimed to have beaten us regularly. But, you know, there's no record of that. So I don't know whether it happened or not. But Jack Ogle played with the newsroom team. He was a very fine anchor, and a great guy. Everybody liked Jack, but he was a little slow. He was a basketball player, basically. He's very tall, and that's where he really shone as a high school athlete. When I told him that the station in Enid that I was going to work at Channel 4, my boss there, Casey Comia, advised me not to go. And I said, why? And he said, well, Pubco will never pay you what you're worth, but they're such a good company, you'll never want to leave. And I didn't for 25 years. At least part of what Casey told me is true. It was a good place to work. We had the best of everything, and we usually had it first. Color television, radar, color film, CP16 cameras, color film processor, the load. Everything we needed, we had, thanks to Norm Bagwell and, after he left, Lee Allen Smith. Very supportive of the news department. And probably one of the best blessings is that when I went to work there in 1955, television news was being invented. And it continued to be invented the whole time I was there, and I was a part of that. And, you know, not many people are blessed to that extent, to the extent that I was blessed coming to work at Channel 4 at the time I did.